Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Middle Ages channel. Today we're stepping out of the grand halls and into the heart of the castle, the kitchen. This wasn't just a place to cook, it was a bustling, chaotic, and absolutely essential hub of activity that kept the entire household running. So grab your apron and let's turn up the heat. First, let's talk about the sheer scale of these operations. A castle kitchen wasn't a cozy little room. It was often a separate building, or at least in a separate wing, to reduce the risk of fire spreading to the main living quarters. Imagine a cavernous space, ceilings blackened with soot, and not one but multiple enormous hearths, each big enough for a person to stand in. These were the engines of the castle, roaring with fire from dawn until long after dusk. The team working here was massive. At the top you had the master cook, a highly respected and well-paid professional. This wasn't just ice shucks who could roast a chicken. This was a manager, an artist, and a logistician. They were responsible for planning menus, managing supplies, and overseeing a small army of staff. You had specialized cooks for roasting, baking, and pastry. Below them were the scullions, the lowest-ranking members who did all the grueling work, scrubbing pots, plucking birds, gutting fish, and hauling water. It was a strict hierarchy, and everyone knew their place. So what were they cooking? For the lord and his family, the food was all about extravagance and display. Think massive roasts of venison, wild boar, and swan, often redressed in their own feathers or skin to look alive on the platter. Spices were a huge status symbol. Since they had to be imported from the east, spices like saffron, cloves, nutmeg, and pepper were incredibly expensive. A heavily spiced dish wasn't just tasty, it was a blatant display of wealth. Sauces were rich and complex, often based on wine or verjuice, which is a tart liquid made from unripe grapes. The colors were just as important as the flavors. Cooks used natural ingredients to create vibrant dishes: parsley juice for green, saffron for a brilliant gold, and even sandalwood for red. A feast was a multi-sensory experience, designed to awe the guests. And sweets? They loved them. Elaborate sugar sculptures called subtleties were often served between courses, depicting castles, knights, or mythological beasts. It was edible art. But what about the rest of the household? The soldiers, servants, and stable hands weren't eating swan pie. Their diet was much simpler and more practical. The mainstays were bread, cheese, and a thick stew or pottage made from whatever vegetables were available, like peas, beans, and onions, sometimes with a bit of meat or fish thrown in. Ale was the common drink for everyone, from the lord to the lowest servant. It was safer than water, which was often contaminated, and it provided a good source of calories for a hard day's work. Imagine the sounds and smells: the constant clang of pots and pans, the sizzle of meat on the spit, the rhythmic chopping of vegetables, and the shouts of the cooks. The air would be thick with smoke from the fires and a complex mix of aromas: roasting meat, baking bread, fragrant spices, and, let's be honest, probably the less pleasant smells of a hot, crowded workspace. There were no modern refrigerators, so keeping food fresh was a daily challenge. They relied on smoking, salting, and pickling. The castle's larder and cellars were a treasure trove of preserved foods, essential for surviving the long winter months or a potential siege. The kitchen was also a social hub. It was a place of gossip, camaraderie, and probably a fair bit of drama. It was hot, grueling work, but it was also a community. The kitchen staff worked together, ate together, and relied on each other to get through the long, demanding days. Serving a major feast with hundreds of guests and dozens of courses was a monumental undertaking that required precise timing and teamwork. The pressure would have been immense. One of the most iconic images of a medieval kitchen is the spit. Turning a heavy spit, laden with a whole pig or several birds, was a job in itself. This was often done by a young boy known as a spit jack or turnspit. It was a monotonous and hot job, sitting by the fire for hours, slowly rotating the handle to ensure the meat cooked evenly. In some wealthier households, they even developed a clever solution: the turnspit dog, a special breed of dog trained to run on a treadmill connected to the spit. Life in the castle kitchen was a world away from the chivalry and romance we often associate with the Middle Ages. It was a place of hard labor, intense heat, and incredible skill. The people who worked there were the unsung heroes of the castle, their tireless efforts fueling the entire medieval world, one roast, one loaf, and one pottage at a time. It truly was the engine room of a bygone era. Thank you so much for joining me on this culinary journey back in time. What part of the medieval kitchen fascinates you the most? Let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and subscribe to the Middle Ages channel for more deep dives into the past. We'll see you in the next one.